Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the WellMed Charitable Foundation Caregiver Teleconnection session. Today, we have frontotemporal dementia, or FTD, what it is, what it isn't, and why it's important. And I'm so delighted to introduce Sharon Hall. And I will let her tell you a little bit about herself and start her presentation.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I am Sharon Hall, and I am an FTD and young onset dementia advocate. And the reason for that is my husband has frontotemporal dementia. We've been on the journey for 7 years. We're into year 8. I will tell you that I am not a medical professional. I'm a trained advocate and I am a care partner. And this presentation is not meant to diagnose, it's for informational purposes, just so you understand what the signs and symptoms are of FTD and how it is different than Alzheimer's, which we hear a lot about, how this is different and how you can recognize it if you see it in your family or in your community. I've been doing this work for about 7 years now. I've been very honored to present in quite a few places. I believe the WellMed Foundation actually contacted me because I spoke at the NIH Research Summit on dementia caregiving and support. And they asked if I would do this. And I was astounded the following year when they said it was so popular and we did it again. So this is year 7. I am so happy that they've been involved in spreading the word of FTD. So shall we get started, Evelyn?
Yes.
All
Please.
right. So frontotemporal dementia, what it is, what it isn't, and why it's important. It's very important to know the diagnosis. What is FTD? These are some things that people will say when their person has been diagnosed with FTD. They're not the same person they used to be. This is a key. I was just at the AFTD conference in St. Louis, and Dr. Bruce Miller from UC San Francisco spoke. He was the keynote, and he said, if someone's personality is changing, that should trigger a neurological exam. And I always say, when someone is not who they were, think neurology before psychology. Because as you can see here, people automatically jump, physicians automatically jump to depression, anxiety, sometimes bipolar, sometimes schizophrenia, because they don't know this diagnosis. And so people that push their way through and say, no, this can't be bipolar. I've read about that. That isn't what it is. And somebody might say, depression, they're never depressed. They don't seem depressed at all. But that's the way it's taken in by physicians and by people around as well. These people are very good at acting. So you might be a neighbor and say, well, there's nothing wrong with Joe. He seems fine to me. While you're going, something's wrong with Joe. And the neighbor might say, well, I don't see anything wrong with Joe. And that's because Joe can hold it together very well for very short periods of time, like a doctor's visit. So they also, another key thing that people should always look for is a craving for sweets and carbs. That seems to be a real telling point of especially behavior variant. We're going to talk about all the different types of FTD because they have their own little umbrella as well. So there's more than one type of FTD. So we'll talk about those as well. But this is really important to see what people say. They're always tired, stays up to 2 or 3, doesn't want to go outside, doesn't want to be active. We're going to talk about that. How did that not trigger something other than bipolar or depression? And the reason that they do this, the reasons that physicians do this, it's pretty obvious. We're going to get to why they don't recognize it, but they always go to what they know. And what they know about dementia is that it's older and it it has to do with memory. Well,
Mm.
PS, not FTD. So these are some of the things that you'll hear people say when they've been diagnosed and the journey they've been on. Here's some basic facts about FTD. It is the leading cause of dementia under the age of 60. However, it can be diagnosed from the age of 20 to 80 and even beyond. There have been some over 80. There are a lot of people that in that window of 65 plus are misdiagnosed with Alzheimer's oftentimes because that's what doctors expect. But if they really look into it, there have been studies done that looked at a clinical diagnosis of the person. So let's say they were diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and then they looked at the brains, and they didn't look at the clinical before they looked at the brains. And they found that 2 out of 5 were actually FTD and not Alzheimer's. So it's very common to be even misdiagnosed as another dementia because they just don't know about FTD. The average age is between 45 and 60, but as I said, we have people in their 20s and people in their 80s plus that have FTD. The big thing about FTD is that memory loss is not a primary symptom. So it's not the first thing you see. The first thing you see are personality changes, unusual behavior for that person, speech issues, they're having trouble producing speech, coming up with a word, misnaming things, or they may have movement disorders where they're suddenly falling a lot. So those are things that initially present as the different types of FTD. The average time to diagnosis is 4 years and 5 providers. Why is that? Why is that? We know something's wrong with somebody. We take them to the doctor. We're going to get a diagnosis. Well, your primary care physician has only seen 0 to 2 people with FTD in their entire career. Even a neurologist only sees 5 to 10 in their entire career. It's usually diagnosed by a cognitive neurologist, usually at a teaching center. So if you have someone young that's exhibiting a personality change, having behaviors, losing jobs, things like that, you need to get to a teaching hospital with a dementia specialty clinic. That's usually where they'll be able to recognize FTD, and they'll put you through neuropsychological testing, which will really pinpoint what this is. And that's the way that most people get an accurate diagnosis. But it does take them 4 years and 5 providers because they keep going to, we usually are pushed off to psychology. So many of us ended up in marriage counseling because the doctor says, oh, this is a marriage issue. Right. Never has been before. And suddenly we're going to a person for marital counseling. And the problem with that is it delays the real diagnosis. And on top of that, it causes a lot of resentment in the spouse because they're thinking that this person is turning into a jerk, which I thought of my husband. We were in marriage counseling. I could see that he was trying very hard, but nothing was working. Nothing was changing. So you get caught up in this psychological rabbit hole, and you're still seeing changes in this person. It's very confusing to the people that are around them. And the doctors just don't understand that you keep saying, this isn't depression. This isn't marital issues. This isn't what you're saying it is, but I can't find out what it is. It's very frustrating when you're trying to get a diagnosis for FTD. It is progressive and it's fatal. It's a neurodegenerative disease. The average life expectancy is 4 to 8 years, but it can be 2 to 20. So 4 to 8 is kind of the average, but it certainly can go very much longer. And you also will find that when you retrospectively look at the person, you say, ooh, about 5 years ago, I started wondering why they did this. And you can sort of go back 5, 10, sometimes 20 years when you see little tiny signs of these changes in the person. So it's one of those things where when you look back, you can say, ooh, the time that I went, what are you doing? That I bet was the beginning of this disease. So those are some things that that people have to think about when they're looking at FTD, when they're looking at someone. What does it matter if you take them to a neurologist just for a screening? Just get neurology out of the way. If that's not what it is, it's fine to go down the psychological path. But if it's neurological, find out, because that gives you more time to deal with the diagnosis, to make memories with the person that's involved. Sometimes people are diagnosed so late, they're almost in the mid-late stages of the disease before it becomes so apparent that they finally get a diagnosis. So that's why it's important to really understand that when someone changes, think about neurology, at least get that out of the way. And if that's not neurology, if they can't find anything, if the neuropsych is fine, doesn't mean it's not. Might be too early to tell. And oftentimes an MRI in FTD is completely normal in the beginning. Usually a PET scan will show it more, but a lot of insurance companies will not pay for that. And you're talking about people that are under Medicare age. So you're not talking about somebody that can get it done through Medicare. This is somebody who has insurance that goes, why do you need a PET scan? You're only 40 years old. Mm-hmm. So those are some things that sort of delay that diagnosis. Let's go on and talk about the different types. There's more than one presentation with FTD. The most common is the behavior variant. That's the most common of FTD. The second is language. That's primary progressive aphasia. And there's more than one of those. And we'll talk about that. And then there can also be motor issues, and there's more than one of those. Sometimes it's a combination. Sometimes it will start with behavior, then become language, and then even motor. So as it moves through the brain and different areas of the brain are affected, that's when you have this progression into other areas of the brain and you become language, you have motor issues. My husband is an absolute behavior variant person, but now he has trouble with language. He has trouble coming up with the words. He doesn't understand what I say sometimes. And he also walks with a rollator. So he does have some motor issues. So it can be a combination of all, especially as it moves along in its progression. So let's talk about each one individually. Behavior variant FTD, the most common, the most misunderstood, the most misdiagnosed. And looking at some of these characteristics of behavior variant FTD can tell you why it's so misdiagnosed. Okay, all of a sudden somebody's gaining weight and they're eating carbs and sweets a lot. Okay, well, does that say dementia to you? It also doesn't say dementia to your doctor. If I say, gee, he doesn't even cut the grass anymore. The grass is growing up. He just sits in the chair and watches TV all day. Does that sound like dementia to you? Doesn't to your doctor either. A person might lose jobs. And usually what happens is they'll start at a higher level in a job. Suddenly, they might be there 15, 20 years, and suddenly they're fired. What they tell you is that, oh, we have a new manager and they were against me. And they move down in stature in a job. So they might start out as a manager. Now they're no longer a manager. And after that, they get dismissed again, and they go even lower and lower in responsibilities of the job. So if somebody is suddenly losing jobs that was a pretty steady worker and didn't have issues at work, ding, ding, ding. Hypersexuality. People don't like to talk about this one, but you need to talk about this one because otherwise you won't know that that person may be exhibiting a neurological disorder. Hypersexuality is common in behavior variant FTD. What does that mean? It means this person may be suddenly saying inappropriate things to your neighbors or your family, even your children. And you're thinking, what is wrong with you? Don't be telling those types of jokes, very off-color jokes in public. Uh, those are things that you just wouldn't think about it being dementia, would you? Infidelity, big one. This is the one that gets the resentment going in the spouse prior to diagnosis. This person that you've been married to for 15 years suddenly is having an affair with the neighbor, and you're just completely thrown off, and you have no idea how this happened. They've never done anything like this before. It's totally out of left field, and you're just thinking they've turned into a big fat jerk. And that's not the case. Many, many people in this situation where infidelity happens, and you don't think about dementia with infidelity, you think about you're a big fat jerk. So, though, and it happens equally between men and women. So, this is not just a male thing. Some people, when they hear hypersexuality, infidelity, they always think about men do that. No, not in FTD. It's pretty equal between men and women being diagnosed with FTD. So women also can have this infidelity, hypersexuality, and it's a change in their character. You don't change your character. That's something that takes a lot of psychologists to work on you a lot to change any behaviors, much less for you to become a loyal spouse and suddenly have affairs. That it doesn't go together. Always think about that. Is this who this person has always been, or is this new? If this is something new, that's when your red light should go off. They also have a lack of empathy. I broke my femur while my husband had BVFTD, and he was like, "Are you all right?" No, I'm sitting on the stair. "Are you okay?" No. "Can you get up?" No. "Do I need to call somebody?" I think maybe you should. "What's the address?" We were out of town. "What's the address here?" No, no compassion for me whatsoever. But it was his lack of empathy. And normally, before FTD showed up, if anything happened to me, he went into full panic mode. It was call 911, call 911. Nothing when I broke my femur. It was like, I knew he had FTD at that point, thank goodness. They also have emotional blunting. A lot of times people will say they're no longer paying attention to the children. They don't have any interest in the children anymore. And they were a great mother or father. They seem to be moving away from me. They don't speak to me anymore when they come home. Those are things that you may think of as depression. You may think of them as bipolar if they get suddenly happy, suddenly sad. That's where all these misdiagnosis comes in. And you can see where this really looks psychological. You can't blame the doctor for thinking this is psychological, but you being in the family, seeing this person for many, 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 many years, you know this is new. So that's what should trigger, please get us to a neurologist and let's eliminate that possibility. These are some of the stealing, molestation, drunk driving, detrimental financial decisions, aggression, even prostitution, gambling. No one wants to talk about this. This needs to be brought out because this can happen. When you see someone go into a store, they don't know they're stealing. Oftentimes they'll go to the self-checkout, something doesn't work right, they just put everything in a bag and walk out. You might have seen in the news people people with dementia being tackled outside of a store because they stole something and they had no idea that they stole it. It wasn't, well, the machine didn't work, so I had to have the groceries and I just took them. So they can't put consequence, they can't make what they do equal to a consequence. So it's not stealing to them. Molestation, nobody wants to talk about that, but the hypersexuality makes that happen. And should it be dismissed? No, it's not that it's, we have a lot of people in jail that have FTD. In fact, it's predicted that about 20% of the prison population has undiagnosed FTD.
Wow.
For these very reasons. This might be you might have seen some of these things initially in the weight gain, but now all of a sudden these more serious things are happening and you don't even think about dementia. So that's why it's always good to know these things. Somebody that never had a drunk driving ticket suddenly does. They had their financial decisions are terrible. You have to immediately get a hold of the money. They're involved in scams. They'll listen to people on scams. We've had people literally lose more than $1 million before they have been diagnosed. And oftentimes that happens when one spouse takes care of all of the financial dealings and the other spouse really isn't involved a lot. So they don't understand that suddenly the 401k is gone and they don't know where it went. They went out or they come home one day, you have a family of 5 and they come home with a 2-seater sports car. What did you do? Well, I've always wanted this car. Well, now where are we going to put the kids? Where are the 3 kids going to sit? So those are the types of things that they'll do that are very out of character. Anything out of character, remember that, out of character. If you're out of character, you definitely need to see a neurologist, not a psychologist. Aggression, they can be aggressive. They can, don't get between that. When they see this guy that's mad over here, don't let him get between you and the door. So sometimes aggression will come out and it will be because they think you are doing something against them. So they will be aggressive towards you. A lot of times this happens with driving. There are many stories here. People don't believe that this person that they've known for 20 years, 30 years, that this person could suddenly hurt them, but it's not them. Their brain is going away. That part of their brain that would normally keep them from getting so angry that they wanted to hurt you is no longer there. It's not the person you knew. This is a new person. Aggression, we have seen aggression lead to death in a spouse. It's not common, but it certainly happens more than you would think. And I won't begin to tell you the stories. They're pretty gruesome, but it can happen. Prostitution, soliciting prostitution or engaging in, because let's remember, men and women are equally affected with behavior variant FTD. So it could be someone who suddenly they're going out at night and going to the bars and not coming home until all hours of the morning. And this was a wonderful mother. What happened here? The kids now are in college and now she's going out in the streets. What's up here? Gambling, big one. A lot of times they'll start gambling away all their money. And if the spouse doesn't have a handle on the money, they don't know what's happening. They don't know. Credit card debt can mount up. They can give money away. That prince from a foreign country has contacted them and they're sure that that prince is going to give them millions of dollars if they just give them $50,000. And that's how they lose their money. So this is a very tricky thing, this behavior variant FTD. Oftentimes people will not, my husband's mother had what used to be called Pick's disease. You might have heard that term. It's now behavior variant FTD, but she had Pick's disease. I didn't know what I was looking at. I was in marriage counseling for a year, not knowing what was going on with my husband and why he had gone from this very loving person who did these enormously great things for me romantically. And now he's sexting with somebody. What in the world? I didn't know. I didn't know that behavior was part of her disease because it was very kept under the rug. Because of all of these things, it was kept under the rug. And because of that, I didn't know. I didn't even know. So behavior variant FTD, very important to know that this is a personality change. Someone is not who they were. Think neurology, not psychology. So let's move on to primary progressive aphasia. Primary progressive aphasia, there are different types of those. There's non-fluent agrammatic. This is the one that has the loss of words. You retain the meaning of the word, you just can't come up with it. You know that you want to say, hand me the spoon, you just can't come up with that word. It doesn't come out. So you can't find the word. Sometimes they're unable to follow spoken direction. My husband now will say to me, I don't understand. I don't understand. What did you say? I don't understand you. And I have to remember to try, I'm very verbose, as you can see. I have to be very careful to cut down my words and say as few words as possible when I'm asking him something. So if I can keep it to 4 words or less, usually he can grasp what I'm saying. But if I go off and say, oh, Rod, did you do this? And did you do that? And do we have to do this today? No. He doesn't get that. I don't understand. He might hear the first word and everything else went away. Also have apathy here and job loss. That can also happen because they're not following direction. They're given an assignment and they're not doing it. They're just kind of sitting at their desk looking at emails. They say, did you get this project done? Yeah, oh, no, I'm getting to that. Well, what boss is going to put up with this? So they have a job loss. There's also semantic PPA. That's the loss of the meaning of the word. So you might say to, with someone with semantic might say, hand me the shovel when they're eating soup. They know it's something that you scoop with. They don't know it's they're supposed to say spoon. They're calling it a shovel. So they lose the meaning of the word. They misname objects and people and things like that. It's always misnaming things. They can have a lot of anxiety because they're telling you what they want and you're not understanding. So they get very anxious about why isn't this person doing what they need to be doing? They also can have the apathy. So apathy runs through all of the FTDs. Apathy is a big one where someone just sits and watches television or plays a game, or they just, you can't get them up and motivated. There's no motivation. So you can see where that would lead to job loss. When you don't have motivation in a job, guess what happens? Here's a quote from someone. He was losing the ability to use language. Ding, ding. He had a traumatic brain injury and symptoms could be attributed to that, except the loss of language. He was referred to a psychiatrist believing it was psychosis. When I look back now, I'm like, why wasn't he referred to a neurologist that specialized in traumatic brain injury? That was what I alone hunted down and where the actual correct diagnosis came from. Dr. Miller out at UCSF says that about 30% of people that are referred to him come from a frustrated spouse who knows what they are being told is not what it is. They know it's something different. So unfortunately, a lot of us have that thing about, well, the doctor knows. Well, P.S., the doctor gets about a paragraph about dementia of all kinds in their medical training. And on top of that, 0 to 2 people that they see have FTD in their entire career. So they're not thinking this way. When you start seeing the symptoms and you start doing Dr. Google, you're the one that puts it together. You put together, oh my gosh, this might be this. So these are very important things to remember that you look for, and these little changes. And there again, if someone is not who they were, think neurology, not psychology. So we're going to move on from primary progressive aphasia, which is the second type of FTD that you can have. We'll move on to corticobasal degeneration. This gets into the motor. They can stumble and have poor coordination. Usually with corticobasal, it happens more on one side of the body. They can have speech issues, sometimes even becoming mute. Again, the job loss might come first because of the apathy. They may have aggression and the emotional blunting. So corticobasal degeneration is one of the motor issues of FTD. So you can see how weird this could be. So if you have somebody with BVFTD and now they start stumbling, well, maybe it's actually corticobasal degeneration. And sometimes that's what happens at autopsy because they don't know what it is until autopsy. There are no biomarkers for FTD. You can't do a blood test like you do with cholesterol and say, oh, you need a little pill for cholesterol. Well, there's nothing that tells you that this is a neurological degeneration. There are some things coming out now that have at least some way of telling you. There's a neurofilament light chain test that can tell you something's going on in your brain. It's just like troponin for your heart, where they do a troponin level to see if you're having a heart attack because you're shedding that protein. The same is true for neurofilament light chain. They sometimes can see that and know something's going on in your brain, but it doesn't tell them what. So this is kind of diagnosing FTD is putting the puzzle pieces together, seeing these little things that are happening with people and trying to put them together to explain what's going on. But you have to remember that doctors don't know, and we have a tendency to believe they do. You have to press forward. You have to push forward. You have to be the person that's advocating for this person that has changed before your eyes. Oftentimes, everybody says, this is not the person I married. And it's 100% true because their brain has degenerated and they are no longer that person because your frontal lobe takes care of your personality. That's your personality and your judgment and your ability to not say something to somebody that you shouldn't say. That's all in your frontal lobe. In your temporal lobe is your speech. So if it's affecting that part of your brain, you're going to have speech issues. You'll also start having the motor issues. So you can see how this can be very, very strange for families to recognize, and certainly for physicians. There's also progressive supranuclear palsy. This one looks a lot like Parkinson's. Oftentimes, people with progressive supranuclear palsy are diagnosed with Parkinson's first. And they just go, wait a minute, they're having these outbursts of crying or laughing unexpectedly. They have tremors that looks like Parkinson's, but they're stumbling, they're aggressive. One thing about progressive supranuclear palsy that kind of makes them different is they fall backwards. The other thing is they have an eye movement disorder. So they have difficulty looking up, down, side to side. That's a very difficult thing for people with progressive supranuclear palsy. But PSP can look very much like behavior variant when it first starts coming on. There may be a lot of things that behavior variant looks like behavior variant, but they have this Parkinsonism. And like I said, oftentimes they are diagnosed with Parkinson's. I've had calls from people that say, oh, my mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's, but it just doesn't seem, that doesn't seem to be what's happening. So they're looking at these emotional outbursts, that they're now aggressive. They're saying things to you. They might be calling you names. Well, that doesn't sound like Parkinson's. So this can often be misdiagnosed as Parkinson's. I have a friend whose mother had progressive supranuclear palsy, and they were told that it was something different, and only upon autopsy did they find that it was progressive supranuclear palsy. So these things are very hard to diagnose. You have to get to the right place, usually a teaching hospital. This next one is going to surprise you. ALS. 40% of those with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, have FTD, usually of the behavior variant. Same things happen. You get that person that has the balance issues, the swallowing issues. Often they have what's called fasciculations, which is like a ripple in their muscles, you may see. And suddenly they have apathy and job loss and all the BVFTD symptoms. Oftentimes they're diagnosed with BVFTD first and then ALS as it progresses. So we share a gene. BVFTD and ALS share the C9orf72 gene. And that's why 40% of those with ALS will also have behavior variant FTD. One is usually diagnosed before the other. Oftentimes they're diagnosed with ALS and then the BVFTD symptoms come on, or they're diagnosed with BVFTD and then the ALS symptoms come on. So this usually is something that people don't equate with each other, but because they have found that common gene, they now know. Dr. Miller at UCSF says 40% of those with ALS will have behavior variant FTD. And that's probably shocking. You probably think of the ALS and the ice bucket challenge, and these are young people that they can't swallow, they start wasting away. You don't think of them as being a person who might have started with infidelity or job loss or apathy. That's not what you're thinking about. But as they start stumbling and not being able to swallow and all of that, then you go back to the doctor and say, but these other things are happening. And then they're diagnosed with ALS through an EMG. So that's a very uncommon thing that you don't think about. But 40% is a high number. That's a pretty high number. And that is because of that shared gene. So let's move on here and talk about just the fact of young onset dementia. Young onset dementia is broader than just FTD. It is the leading cause of that under the age of 60, the dementias under the age of 60, frontotemporal is the leading cause. But Alzheimer's is only 5 to 6% of all cases, 30% of young onset. That leaves 70%. That leaves 70% of young onset. Oftentimes people are diagnosed with Alzheimer's, young onset Alzheimer's, when it actually is FTD. And that is not determined until you have autopsy. They're getting better at saying whether it's Alzheimer's if they're doing the right tests and you're in the right place with the right doctor. That's the key. That's the key to it all, is finding the right doctor. But a third of the people with young onset dementia have children under the age of 18. Children living at home under the age of 18. A third of people with young onset dementia have no health insurance. The reason for that is if you lose your job and you discover that you have a disease and you go on Social Security disability, first of all, you wait 5 months to even receive benefits, and then you wait a full 2 years to get onto Medicare. It's really a devastating time for young families. How many families that are 40 have enough in the bank to carry them through for 2 years of no insurance? That's really a burden. This is a rapidly growing population. They estimate that 119 per 100,000 people develop young onset dementia, and that's about 3.9 million cases worldwide. This is a big issue, and people don't recognize it because the people are young. Young onset dementia costs are double that of late onset dementia. Why? Why is that? Because you've lost your job when you're 45. What are your main earning years? 45 to 60. That's when you earn the most money you're going to earn. That's when your 401k becomes something to look at, not when you're 35. Think about, what did you have when you were 35? Did you have enough money to pay for $10,000 a month in memory care? Probably not. Probably not. Did you have a long-term disability? Did you have insurance for that? No, you probably didn't. I'm 35. I'm healthy. I go out and play tennis 5 times a week. I'm doing all this stuff, and suddenly I have dementia. I've lost my job. I don't get insurance for 2 years. I'm on Social Security disability, which is a small amount because I haven't worked a lot and I don't have a lot of credits towards Social Security. So my check is little, and I've just lost a big paying job. Think about that. Think about that young person that doesn't have the resources. You build resources as you age. You don't have $1 million in the bank when you are 30. Very few people have that. So you are building your wealth over time and your ability to pay for things. That's why late onset, you've already retired. You're getting your full Social Security. You may have a retirement from your job. You don't get that at 30. That's not on the plate. So think about these young people that have children at home. We have people that have families of one particular family that was featured on 60 Minutes had 4 children under the age of 7 when he was diagnosed. The youngest was 9 months old. The 2 youngest children never knew their father living at home. He had to be in memory care early because the mother had to continue to work to support these children and have insurance for them. So this is a very, very costly disease. AFTD did a study showing that young onset, or particularly FTD, costs a family approximately $120,000 a year. Alzheimer's costs a family approximately $60,000 a year. You're talking about double the expense with half the earning years of someone that's already retired. People don't think about this. It's a very underserved community. It is rapidly growing, and they need some sort of supplemental income or grants to even pay for the care. Even day centers are $100 a day. So if I have to go to work and I have a day center, I'm putting out $500 a week towards my spouse's care. And I still have children at home. I have childcare. Think of those expenses. Do you have that stashed in the bank? I doubt it. I doubt it. Most people don't. So you can see what a great need there is in this community. This is how you can reach me. And I think we'll open it up for any questions now, Evelyn, if that's good with you. And we have anybody with questions? You can
I know
reach
I
me.
have some.
Go ahead.
Please, no, yeah, I would love to hear the participants talk to us first. Any questions, any comments? You know, are there things you're thinking maybe your loved one is exhibiting, then you'd like to talk to Sharon about it? You know, please just unmute your Zoom, press *6. Okay. Oh, Rob Geisel wants to know if they will get these slides. Do you share these slides?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, if you send them to Minerva or to me, I will make sure they're sent out with the questionnaire. Thank you for that question. People always love that. Who else has something? Can unmute your phone. Hello.
I do. I'm Stephanie. And unfortunately, because I was on another meeting, I got on this one a little late. But I've been suffering with long COVID since October of 21.
Mm.
And I finally have a neurologist appointment this Friday. And I haven't gotten help. I've taken a neurocognitive test that said I was normal in the 66th percentile, but I've always scored probably 95 or more percentile on those types of tests in the past. So to me, that's a big decline. And also an MRI showed normal, but did show some beginning frontotemporal degeneration and little shrinkage. So I'm concerned and wanting to know like what questions to ask this neurologist to make the best use of this appointment. Like you had mentioned before about screenings, is there anything they can do? Because I'm just concerned because I've had this for so long that is this, what's the word? Like exasperating, maybe a neurological.
That's a question.
See, I can't even express it.
Yeah, long COVID has been shown to affect the brain. There are people that have that fog with
Yeah.
long COVID. So I would again suggest a teaching center that has a cognitive department, a cognitive neurology department, and they can usually sparse that out. So that's where I would start, is with a good, teaching hospital with a department that deals with dementia, and
Okay.
they can usually, that would be my suggestion.
Okay, hopefully this is one, because it's affiliated with UW Health in Madison, University of Wisconsin.
You should be
Hospital.
good there.
Oh, it was a great question. Thank you, Stephanie.
Sure. Thank you.
Marie, you got your phone open? Your line open?
Yes, I'm actually
Oh.
on phone too, because I'm a visual person and I was out. But I have a question. My husband is a veteran and I'm 51 years old. He's 59, and he just got diagnosed about maybe 8 months ago with PTSD, CPTSD. And I'm so lost. I really am. I know it's just beginning, and it's now they send us to counseling, marriage counseling, and I heard you about the infidelity, about the drinking, about the everything. So everything's changed, and I can see it 2 years ago. And now it's like, how do I even, and I was able to do the first appointment with him virtual last week. And now I see, I just observed, and now I know why they haven't even given him more help or anything, because he says, oh, I'm fine. And then everything the doctor was asking him, I'm fine. And when you said that hurt, because you said, oh, they're put together for 5-10 minutes when they go to the visit. And then all of a sudden, when you're home, it's like, he just, every day I fight this battle, and I know it's just beginning. And I'm at a point to where I'm ready to leave, and I don't want to leave my husband, but he's okay. When you said apathy and all that good stuff, and I said, that's my husband, that's my husband, that's my husband. Oh my geez. And I want more help from the VA, but I feel like, no, you need this. And neurologically, okay, I had the question that she had, like, where do I go? How do I start? Like, neurological.
Is he seeing a neurologist or not? Has he seen one?
No.
I would suggest that. And you're going to have to be the advocate to say, this is, oftentimes it's a good idea to write down what you are seeing. Keep a log. This is not what this person has always done. This is what this person has not always done. Make a log of the things that are changing. And you can share that with a physician now through email prior to a visit. And you can say, please don't mention these in front of them, because an overwhelming amount of people with FTD have what's called anosognosia, which means they think nothing is wrong with them. It's everyone else's fault. Nothing is wrong with them. They do not acknowledge that they're having issues. They are not issues to them. So
Mhm.
anosognosia is very large in FTD. It's a big problem. So
Mhm.
you have to be the advocate to push that forward and educate the doctor. Even print things out that shows what FTD is and say, I'm seeing all of these. Could we please look at this? And
Yeah.
there are medications that can control some of the behaviors. There's nothing
Mhm.
for FTD. There are no drugs for FTD. Oftentimes doctors, will put people on Alzheimer's drugs.
Hmm.
It doesn't work. They don't work.
Okay.
Sharon, is there a place where this person could go to see if there was a teaching hospital close, where a neurologist might be found to help her?
I am so sorry. My allergies. Oh, excuse me.
Bless you.
Oh. Yes, if are you only going to the VA? Is that the only insurance or?
Yes. But I'm open to a lot of things. I really am.
Yeah, it's a matter of being able to bear the cost of going to a neurologist outside of, your insurance. But there are VA doctors. So I would definitely start with the VA neurologist.
Right.
And take a list of what's happening. That's really important.
Yeah, this is all my husband. This is all, it's just, this is not even him anymore. And
Yeah.
this is what I'm dealing with. And I'm glad that I got to this because I've learned, I learned a lot, and I thought it was just me. I said, no, he doesn't love me anymore. He doesn't, I just had surgery Friday, minor, but he doesn't even ask me like, how are you doing? Is everything okay? And so I think for this information, I really do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
At
you
least
so much.
pursue
Yeah,
it.
great
I'm not a
question.
doctor, but
Yep.
pursue it.
Yes.
Yes,
And Marie, I know that you've been wanting to say something.
Me?
Yes.
Okay, I do. I just want to thank you for this presentation because it was very, very good and I love it. And I just want to say I recently reading the Untangling Alzheimer from Tom Cummins, but it's actually giving me lots of things, and exactly like you say, you go to doctor says, oh, it's Alzheimer, but you have to think about Alzheimer like if doctor tell you, oh, you have a cancer. Your first question is what cancer, where,
Exactly.
how it's progression. Same thing that's Alzheimer, it's just this one, and then you can have different kind of dementia. But how I make this is actually give me lots of thinking, and because I taking care of my husband who have a stroke and he lost his short memory, but it's triggered dementia because I see that he declining. But I can make his primary care physician to send us to neurologists. He got HMO, he go to WellMed, so that he have to go to WellMed, a neurologist probably. And, we always, when we go, I says, well, I like to, if you send him to neurologist, and he says, well, let's go. And he give him those 3 questions, let's make the circle, put the things.
That does not work with FTD.
Exactly.
Any mental state does not work with FTD. And you have to be an advocate to say, take that list of things that are happening and say, this is not memory. This is what's happening. And we need neurologist. You have to just keep pushing for that, unfortunately, because doctors just don't understand.
Just educate. I just put educate the doctor, like you say, and I actually doing the daily, well, it's not daily, the journal, when I see something, so that I just write the date and what happened and how I feel about it and stuff like this, so that I will to take this one to next visit. Included this from the doctor, the comments, because it's also, she says, how it's educate the doctors. So even if it's about,
we have to educate physicians. We do it all the time. And that, physicians just don't know. Many of us that do advocacy often speak to the interns and, doctors, people that are becoming doctors that don't know about anything about dementia. I see there's some questions in the chat as well.
Well, Sharon, we're kind of running out
Thank
of
you,
time.
Sharon.
Yeah,
I'm going to compile a couple of them for the sake of time. And I think a lot of it has to do with how do people find out about what's available for people with FTD? Is there a national association? Is there
Yes.
some place where they can go to get information about the centers of excellence, or can reading material or fact sheets, or where can people go to get more information and maybe support groups?
The association is the TheAFTD.org. And there you can find the places in the country. You look at their website and you'll see the places in the country that deal with FTD, all the centers that diagnose FTD. And you'll also find support groups there. I do a support group twice a week, actually, because FTD people need, FTD care partners need a lot of support. It's a very different disease. And so I do it twice a week on Zoom. And I'll be happy to give that to you, Evelyn. The link always stays the same so that my care partners don't have
And
to
we will
think about
include
it.
that with the resources for people. And I have another question that's more probably generic. And you keep talking about the rapid growth of FTD. Why?
Better diagnostics, better diagnosticians.
Okay, so it was always there. It was just called something else.
Yes.
Okay.
My mother-in-law was diagnosed with Pick's disease. That's what they used to call it back in 1989, 1990. So actually, Albert Pick found Pick bodies in the brain, and Alzheimer's used that research to discover Alzheimer's disease. So Pick's was first. But because it looks so psychological, it definitely has its challenges.
Right. And may people use your email address here to ask you more questions if they didn't get their questions answered today?
Absolutely. I will certainly answer them as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you so
And
much.
just if you would just put in a referral, just put WellMed FTD or something that I know that you have a question for me from WellMed. I get a lot of emails, and I want to make sure I see yours as soon as possible.
That is so kind of you. I want to thank you so much for this presentation. I know people still have questions. I am going to do a little cleanup housework. The first thing I want to say is, if you have not registered for this session, if you got the phone number, or the link, the Zoom link from someone else, please call our customer service representative. Otherwise, you will not get the questionnaire. You will not get the resources. And we want you to have those. So you won't get the slides either. So the number to call if you have to sign up and register for today is 866-390-6491. That's 866-390-6491. And you will get, the AFTD.org. You will get the slides. You will get, any other information that Sharon forwards to me and that I can forward to you. You'll also get the monthly calendar bonus gift, just like infomercials. Because the monthly calendar, we still have, and I don't have time to run through them, but we still have 8 more this month on a myriad of different things, including this one is the Spanish version of what Sharon gave today. So if you know any Hispanic folks, anyone who speaks Spanish or can listen to it and understand it, please let them know. That one will happen on Wednesday, May 24th at, 1 o'clock Central Time. So we have many others. Get on the list and you'll get all of the monthly information. And I just want to thank you all for participating. Those of you who asked questions were so good, help other people all the time. And we really appreciate you participating with us today. And Sharon, you're the bomb. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. It was pretty good.